Hi, I'm Angela, and this is the Book Nerdass. If you hadn't noticed, I've kind of been a tiny bit missing for the last few months, and that's because I have been ill. If you know my Twitter account, you'll know that there is a pinned notice that sits there and talks about why I've been missing. I've had an illness that I've been diagnosed with for the last 8 years flare up in pretty spectacular terms. I've also had to have dental work and all sorts of interesting and fascinating things. And I've been dealing with things like neurologists and anesthesiologists and the potential for neurosurgery in the next 18 months. Go team on that. So it's been a really testing time, and reading kind of fell by the wayside. YouTube certainly definitely disappeared off the face of the planet. And I've really just been trying to hold myself together in some respects, which meant I also did therapy, because that's how, you learn how to make lemonade from lemons. So that's why I've been missing. I hope that's okay. So, yes. So why am I back? Because I am still passionate about books. I love books. I still read. I may have taken a little time out or taken forever to read Sarah J. Maas. That review is coming. It's coming, my friends. It's coming. But yes, I'm here because I have read something that I'm really passionate about, and I want to tell you about it. And that book is easily this one. This is Ali Land's Good Me, Bad Me. And if I can never get the title out, yay! So what is it about? And I'm putting it down because this is the review of that book only. So what is it about? So it follows Millie, who is a 15-year-old foster kid who is settling into a new family, a new school, and she's desperate. She is really desperate to make new friends as well. But Millie is not her real name. She's been given this new name, as well as new family and even new city, having been shunted from Devon to London, which is, 200-300 mile difference, because she shopped her mother to the police and she needs to be kept safe. Her real name is Annie, and it is constantly brought up in the book. Whenever she hears her mother's voice in her mind. And for anyone who has been through abuse, which this book deals with, you'll know that your parent always comes back to you until you deal with it. So, Annie shops her mother into the police for what, you ask? She has serial murdered 9 children under the age of 10 in pretty spectacular way. So if you hadn't gathered, this book has trigger warnings. I will get to those in a minute. She really wants this new, fresh start that she's been given, and she's struggling. She's struggling with her own ghosts. She's struggling with the fact that her foster sister wants nothing to do with her. And of course there's the usual teenage cattiness that comes in with God knows only how many hormones to beat. Bullying occurs big time. Everything from the usual horrible things that kids do to inevitably doing things like taking somebody's number and posting it in relation to, I don't know, how do you describe this? Escort advertisements that you can find in local newspaper shops. No joke, that does go down. And so, yeah, this book has this really good ring of truth, because I suffered bullying. I had similar kind of things going down. But as Millie, or Annie, is trying to deal with this whole new life, she's also having to deal with the repercussions of having shopped her mother into the police. There is a court case looming, and as the ghosts of that past that she's going to have to relive in a court and be questioned about start raising their ugly heads. It's not just her mother's actions that she has to reckon with, it's her own as well. And it's in this tension of that reckoning with your own actions that this story really finds its footing. She's dealing with the voice of her mother in her mind. She's dealing with the fact that, yes, she did actually go tell. And she's also having to deal with feelings of complicity. And as the book goes on, and I'm trying desperately not to spoil a lot of stuff here, as the book goes on, you really start seeing this character as a much more three-dimensional and not just what she wants to present to the world kind of character. As I said, this book really does have trigger warnings aplenty. So, brief rundown. You have child abuse. So, you don't get child murder without child abuse. Those two things are trigger warnings. You also have child sexual abuse. It's very, very oblique. It's not really in your face, but it is definitely hinted at and mentioned. And I think that's actually the more powerful pathway that Land takes to describing what has happened to Millie. And I'm going to use Millie rather than Annie. It also deals with bullying, and it can be pretty brutal. If you were bullied and you really don't want to relive it, you might want to consider giving it a miss. It also deals with drugs and attempted rape. There is an attempted rape scene, which is pretty tough. It's not centered on the central character, but it is there. But it's also a book that, aside from your trigger warnings, also deals with teen mental health and is really responsible with the way that it deals with it. It talks about medication, and it talks about in therapy. It doesn't necessarily sit there and say what you should or shouldn't do. It's not that kind of a book. But this book definitely mentions it in terms of how this character goes through her life, how the fact that she is living with a psychologist as her foster father, and how he definitely creates sessions where he will go through things with her, and how they do have medications for her to deal with all the trauma that she's been through. There is also, and again, trigger warning, for attempted suicide, and that also has repercussions. But it also has this amazing verisimilitude, which is why I really recommend this book. Ali Land is actually somebody who has worked within the mental health sector. She worked both in Australia and here in the UK as somebody who was in child and adult mental health services, or also known as CAMS. And it's her experiences that seem to come into play in this book so vividly that it's hard not to find this book impacting, even if it hasn't triggered you in some respect. It's engrossing, but I wouldn't say it's an enjoyable book, which sounds really bad, because you're sitting there thinking, hold up, you're recommending me a book that you didn't enjoy. You're not going to enjoy it because of the content matter on some levels. It seems wrong to sit there and say, you're going to enjoy this book, you know. But it is a book that is engrossing and you want to read. And that's the bonus. This is, you know, one of the best parts of this book. So, I do recommend it. But if you think, you know, it's going to trigger you, so I'll go over those trigger warnings, you know, child abuse, child sexual abuse, child murder, bullying and drugs and attempted rape and attempted suicide. If any of that is going to trigger you and cause any kind of damage to your mental health, don't read it. Just don't. Give it a miss. But if you can deal with that, or those things don't trigger you in any way, know that you will be impacted, but it is a really good read. And I've, you know, listed it as a 4.75 read for myself. I really think it's a great book. Its publisher is Penguin Random House, and it's set in the UK. So if you like it, or like the sound of it, have a crack at it. And I'll see you on the flip side of the page.